Thank you, and good morning, Mr. Webster, Mr. Speaker. It's been 4 days since the mass shooting in Dallas. It's been a month since the mass shooting in Orlando. It's been 7 months since the mass shooting in San Bernardino and at the Planned Parenthood clinic in Colorado Springs. It's been a year since the mass shooting in Charleston. It's been 2 years since the mass shooting in Umpqua Community College in Oregon. It's been 3.5 years since the mass shooting in Newtown, Connecticut. It's been 4 years since the mass shooting at the theater in Aurora, Colorado. It's been 5.5 years since the mass shooting in Tucson, Arizona, where our colleague Gabby Giffords was shot. And Mr. Speaker, please talk to Mr. Ryan. Not once, after any of those shootings, in all of these 5.5 years, have we had one hearing or one vote on gun violence. Not one. Now, we've had 60 votes on repealing the Affordable Care Act, none of which went anywhere. The Republican majority has spent millions of dollars going after Benghazi or emails to no avail. One vote. Not one hearing, nothing on gun violence. Now, Mr. Webster, you know, I'd much rather be here talking about the Broncos winning the 50th Super Bowl. I'd much rather be talking about the unbelievable accuracy of NASA getting the Juno satellite to Jupiter after 5 years of space travel within 1 second of the planned time. I'd much rather be talking about Jenny Simpson, who's a University of Colorado graduate who's going to Rio, and wish her much success and that the wind be at her back. Those would be a lot more fun. Those would be some things I would love to do, but we've got to grapple with this issue. It's not going away, and we're not going away. We've asked for 2 common sense pieces of legislation. They certainly aren't going to handle all the ills of society, but one is no fly, no buy, meaning if you're on the terrorist watch list, you don't get a gun. The second is so common sense, which is background checks on anybody who wants to purchase a weapon. Those 2 simple pieces of legislation we've asked to be brought to this floor. In fact, a couple weeks ago, we were so upset that we actually did a filibuster and broke some rules of this House to try to make our voices heard, to have a vote. The Republican majority has refused to let us have that vote, let us have a hearing. Mr. Curbelo, these are bipartisan pieces of legislation sponsored by Mr. King. Mr. Curbelo, just a second ago, asked that something be brought up, but it's not going to be brought up. It's time. It's time that we have a vote. It's time that we have a hearing. It's time that we do something about gun violence. And today, I've just brought the picture of Garrett Swayze, police officer who was killed in the mass shooting at the Planned Parenthood facility in Colorado Springs, and a picture to remember Alex Teves, who was killed in the Aurora movie theater protecting his girlfriend from being shot by a madman who thought he was the Joker. It's time, Mr. Speaker, it's time, Mr. Webster, that we address these things. We can't avoid it any longer. These subjects are not going away. We're not going away. These people cannot have died in vain. Whether it's the 5 police officers shot last week, the 49 people killed at the nightclub, the hundreds that have been killed by guns over the course of the last few years, it's time for a hearing, and it's time for a vote. And thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield back.